Let's just get this over with already. So at the moment of recording this, Light Island is the most recent island to be added to the game, however long ago that may seem. Some islands have wildly varying views when they first drop, and this one was no different. However, now that time has gone, it appears that people have mellowed out and things are starting to appear by pattern. Describing this island is no simple feat still, mind you. It's just a very interesting song to talk about. Starting, like always, at the third worst spot is the big monster itself, Bloat. It ain't the worst, but that's because it isn't really anything at all, honestly. The sound on its own is pretty cool sounding. The issue is mostly the fact that in the full song, this thing is harder to notice than a hedgehog among pincushions. Honestly, I feel this thing is pretty overhated in the grand scheme of things, since in the end it's nothing really worth getting heated over. Its biggest sin is just being painfully forgettable and unimpactful, which is bad, mind you, but at least it doesn't negatively impact anything. Second worst is a shocking Mammoth placement, but on closer inspection, a justifiable one. While if you just let it be background noise, it doesn't seem to be much more than an unimpressive track on a trio that really doesn't need to exist. If you listen closer, things start getting really bad. For some reason, the voice acting for this track this time around is far under the standards previously set for the monster. Going microtonally off and just kind of mucking up any sense of structure or cohesion present. And even then, if everything worked as planned and this monster had zero issues with the performance, we'd still have what I said earlier. Just background noise that's part of a trio that doesn't have any reason to exist. Alrighty, at number 1 we have probably the most disappointing thing to happen on a magical island to date. One constant theme on the magical islands is that every new monster is amazing in some way. Even the monsters who put low effort musically are usually remembered for another aspect, such as design or personality. On the previous 3 islands, every single magical monster is memorable and interesting in their own way, and it seemed this island was heading in that direction too. But then it all changed. Everything was ruined the day Pluck Bill dropped onto the land and ruined the magical island perfect streak. Not only is this thing designed ugly, it's lacking any sort of charm or interest behind it. It's also got the disservice of being a drastically inferior version of the concept it was originally based on. That being said, if you were wondering how it worked in the song, well, that's where the problems really lie. Pluck Bill plays at a very specific rhythm that clashes against every single thing on the island, and everything the island set up to this point. And it does it all on an awful sounding sound font that is just depressing to listen to. Even if everything worked out and this thing didn't clash with everything, all it adds is just the same thing covered by like 3 to 4 other monsters. So even if it works, it's not doing anything. And it doesn't work, so it's not doing anything. This is easily the worst magical monster in the game. It ain't even a fair contest for anything else. Nothing comes close. Dishonorable mentions include the following monsters. Tutu is a really boring monster that adds nothing of substance to the song. It is as bland and unimpressive as it comes and is basically a waste of a monster slot. This thing really has no reason to exist. So one really big argument point on this island that always tends to rear its head is Gob. And as it turns out, our group was not spared of this effect. We have arguments for both sides, so I'll be going over both of them in this video. The one thing people tend to jump to whenever talking about the negatives of Gob are of course the fact that it is really blaring and covers up the more interesting things to focus on. This wouldn't be as much of an issue if it didn't also negatively clash with a lot of the things that play in the second half. There's no reason this thing needed to play the whole song. There's also been talk about it playing sour notes, but I've honestly never been able to understand that one at all. But it's still worth mentioning. So, the bad monsters on Light Island are usually the really uninteresting cases, and as such, the island has a lot more room than usual for good monsters to overtake those bad picks. Do they capitalize on this? Let's find out, and hopefully they do. At third place, we have the returning fire monster Souza, and honestly, this was a barely qualifier case. It does have cool things, mind you, like its general tone and power, but it's a far cry from the Souza from before, and generally doesn't compare well in the slightest. Overall, it's a good positive for this island in a vacuum, but knowing Souza, it could have been better handled. I do really commend one thing though, and that's the fact that this thing does something really interesting in my eyes. Souza plays triplet notes over Potbelly's 8th notes, and that's rhythmically interesting, and that sort of rhythmic combo is something I always really like. If only Pluck Bill didn't ruin everything with its stupid quarter notes, then I'd actually be able to enjoy something. Number 2 is the light monster that has been with us longer than the rest, that being Florus. Remember how Calacula was a perfect single element for being really powerful and insanely complex, but still fitting within the idea of being a single element? Well, Florus kind of throws that entire concept out the window, because why is this thing a single element? It's literally the best light monster by a landslide. Nothing else even remotely compares to how much this monster does in terms of range, performance, impact, and diversity within the entirety of the light monster catalog. It's a double-edged sword, really, because this monster totally deserves this spot, but at the same time, I also kind of want to knock it points simply for being too good for a single elemental. Well, whatever, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. If it means we get a really good track, then I guess consistency doesn't really need to matter. Number 1 is probably a shocking pick to some, and a very obvious pick to others. It's the main monster itself, Furcorn. It only ever provides to a small portion of the song, but that part is like genuinely the best part in the entire song because of it and Florus alone. It's so simple on the surface, yet it's layered with subtle complexities that raise its status higher and higher as a monster. The beginning track is a nice little callback to Plant Island, and I appreciate it, whereas Firehaven used the callback ill-fittingly and to the detriment of the song, this one uses it really cleverly and ties it in with the actual correct monster. The second track is where things really pick up. The 2 long notes it does are so powerful and enchanting, and you'd never expect it going in because it's flipping Furcorn. The reason it's getting higher than Florus is because as the updates went on, Florus's track became really unnoticeable and hard to focus on, while Furcorn's remained constant and forward. It's easy not to listen to Florus, but Furcorn won't let you forget how good it really is. Honorable mentions include the following monsters. Boscus is really funny on this island, and I like the little trill-like notes it does during certain parts of the song. It certainly isn't winning any prizes in terms of intrigue, but it's got a rhythmic flair that I dig. Spytrap is one of the coolest looking magicals in general, and sound-wise it really sticks out to me as one of the only impactful percussion monsters. It does a really good job of doing this, and I really enjoy it. So, Gob. Well, Gob is my favorite monster on the island. I'm not gonna gush about it, but since we are able to, we put it in both honorable and dishonorable, as it has both qualities. Gob's good qualities are the really powerful chords that completely recontextualize whatever it plays in. It's a necessity for the song's themes and tone, so its downsides are worth the upsides in my eyes, but the downsides still exist. Alrighty, so Light Island is interesting and really good for about a minute. After that, it's bloated, painfully forgettable, and filled with wasted potential. We didn't even cover some of the Light Island monsters because they genuinely add nothing of value to the song. Bulbo is a waste of percussion and ill-fitting. Filament is awkward at best and rhythmically disorientating at worst. And anything else beyond that is just padding. Everything bad about the song can be summed up in one word: filler. It's all just filler and repeats simply because it's trying to be as simple a song as possible. And let me state this, simplicity is not bad at all. Furcorn is one of the most simple tracks on the island, and it is also like the best one. It's boring tracks that are bad, and that's most of Light Island. Did we really need Tutu to play the exact same thing as Flower? That's boring. Did we really need Bloat to play the chords of a verse filled with chords? That's boring. Did we really need 3 monsters to play the same 3 tracks throughout the entire song? That's boring. All of this just leaves the song feeling hollow and lifeless in the later half. I don't hate it at all, but I also never want to revisit it after this video is done. Since there's only one available island left to vote for, I'm pretty sure I can probably guess what the next vote will be leading to. So next time when we're doing Ethereal Island, let's hope we have a more positive note to end on. Anyway, that's it for me, and like always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Alrighty, so we got Light Island, and honestly, it's not that good. It's not that bad, but it's not that good. If it was only the first half, it probably would be up here. If it was only the second half, it'd probably be down here. But because both those halves are together, it just ends up being a middle song. I'd probably rather listen to it than Fire Oasis at least, but realistically, Fire Oasis doesn't have that many issues with it, while Light Island has a ton of issues with it. I think the main thing that puts it above things like the C tiers and especially the D tiers is that there is a listenable first half. There is the first verse, as you would. The Florus and Furcorn part is still genuinely amazing. It's one of my favorite verses in a lot of these songs. But one verse a song does not make. It's just disappointing that after all of the hype, all of the build-up, after all of these staggered releases promising something amazing, what we got was nothing less than forgettable.